celebrating Ben Johnson returning to the Lions. Everybody seems pretty excited about it. I mean, Twitter exploded yesterday. Our text thread kind of went nuts, people going back and forth.
Yeah.
A lot of people thought he was going to leave. Yeah, a lot of people thought it was a foregone conclusion that, hey, and I think that's a little bit of lionism in all of us. Like, why would he stay here? Yeah. Like, he could go be a head coach. But I think that it pulls back the curtain on what's really going on.
Yeah, it's too good. It was too good to be true. I mean, let's be honest here. When I talked about it the last couple of days, I pretty much convinced myself that he was gone. And for a couple of reasons. It had nothing to do with the Lions. It was more so with Ben in his career. I figured, hey, Ben Johnson, he's ready, in my opinion, to take that step, whether he feels like he is or not. He's super talented, and guys are going to want to play for him. He's a great person, great communicator. Everybody that talks about Ben Johnson speaks highly of him. I mean, if you're following Amon-Ra St. Brown, I know you saw his Instagram. He put out his story, if you know, you know, and
just
put the sad
crying face.
So
like, he was
happy.
just so happy he was crying.
And the fact that the players, they love him. And this is why me and Adam advocated for him to be the OC when he was the passing game coordinator, because you kept hearing these quotes by players coming out. Ben Johnson, I credit him for my success. Jared Goff, he's been instrumental in my success. Like, there's all these compliments coming out about Ben, and on top of that, besides Sean Payton, you can make a legitimate argument he was the hottest candidate available. Besides maybe D'Amico, maybe him and D'Amico together, because Ben interviewed, the first couple of days of actually allowing interviews, he already cleared like 4 teams. He had 4 teams scheduled already.
He had 4 interviews on the docket, and I think that is more than anybody else is interviewing for. And sometimes, is that a good thing or is that a bad thing? That we won't know. But, I mean, the good news is he was getting interest from so many teams, but he wasn't showing interest to one team. And that's what I mean about that maybe being a good thing, that he had so many interviews, because it was more like he just wanted to get through the interview process and figure out what it was like, instead of him honing in on one team like, oh, this is the job I really want. So when he was doing multiple interviews, that kind of gave me a little bit more hope that he was going to stay. Because, like I said, he wasn't focused in. If he only interviewed with Carolina and turned down Denver, I'd be like, oof. This guy's honing in on one job.
Yeah, and maybe there's also the flip side of it. As talented as he is, maybe teams were telling him, hey, we love you, but you just don't have enough experience. And maybe that's part of it too. I don't know the details. Hopefully those things will come out. But for Ben, we know he's capable. I mean, that's what we take away. Now, being an OC for 1 year, I mean, you might need a little more experience, at least for teams to look at you. But at the end of the day, this is the NFL. Like, they're going to look at the next hot commodity and take a chance on them. We've seen that multiple times. Even a guy like Matt Rule, who's coached at the collegiate level, I wouldn't be surprised if he was a goner. But the fact of the matter is, the Lions, the organization, that narrative of the Detroit Lions is slowly changing. And the fact that Ben Johnson's coming back, man, we've known things are different. But this just kind of stamps it on top. The fact that Ben, one of the hottest head coaching candidates, says, hey, I like what these guys are building over in Detroit.
Well, and what does that do for free agency, too? What does that show you to people that want to come here, or are we even thinking about coming here? Like, oh, man, I wanted to play in that Ben Johnson offense, or I really liked what they were doing in Detroit. I wonder what it's going to be like next year. Now it takes the wonderment away.
Right.
You know what this team is. You know what they're going to deliver to you next year. If you're an offensive player, Detroit is now a desirable destination for any wide receiver, for any running back, for any lineman. Quarterback, sure, but we don't need one.
Right. Right, and that's the point I made yesterday. Now, I don't want C.J. Stroud, but you got to understand, look at the situation the Lions have right now. And me and Adam talk about that a lot. No matter who comes in, let's say Brad wants to draft a quarterback, ideally. Not saying I want him to, but let's say he does. You have Ben Johnson, one of the best offensive lines, a plethora of weapons. Like, man, Jared Goff, and I'm cool with Jared. This is a guy you can win playoff games with, but I can't fault him. I mean, the situation is a great situation for any quarterback, not just a rookie. Jared Goff as well. So, again, with Ben Johnson, he's the cherry on top. Now you have your play caller. Now you can have consistency within your offense. You don't want to go out and find a replacement. It keeps that, instead of going out and getting a guy from outside the organization, you bring back familiarity, and that's Ben Johnson, this offense that we've seen be explosive all season. So, again, both assistants, can't be any more happy. I know AG's turned the corner as well. I wouldn't want anybody else right now than AG and Ben Johnson going into next year. I really wouldn't.
A couple comments in the WoodwardSports.com chat. Ben Johnson deserves a statue.
He might.
Yeah, it's not off the table. It's not like, listen, we can have that conversation. Like, I'm not saying he doesn't deserve a statue yet. So that's in the conversation.
He'll have his right next to Dan Campbell, Brad Holmes. We'll get them all statues. Why not?
Don Burr in the WoodwardSports.com chat. Ben Johnson has a ton of pressure on him coming in this year. So that's a good question. More or less pressure than if he would have taken a head coaching job?
I mean, I think there's definitely pressure. I mean, you are an OC for one season. You have a top 3-4 offense. Like, that's pressure. But that might be pressure he wants.
Repeating what you already have done, I think, is a little less pressure than going in and taking over an entire organization. So, like, yes, he has pressure on him. Actually, I don't want to call it pressure. He has expectations now.
There you go. A better way to say it.
He has expectations, and he's got to meet those expectations. Because I don't want to be sitting here in a year when the Lions' offense is ranked 21st, and we're like, oh, God, we should have gotten rid of Ben Johnson. Like, he's not the guy. I told you so. See, he would have been better off taking it. Like, I don't want to have that conversation. I don't expect them to be a top 3 offense like they were this year, top 5.
Right.
But if they're top 7, he's done his job.
Yeah, you just want this offense. It doesn't have to be a top 2-3 offense, but it's got to be one of the better offenses. We know what they have on paper. They have enough talent on paper to be one of the better offenses. But to answer your question, too, yeah, there'd be more pressure, obviously, with becoming a head coach. They're expecting you to turn the team around. He's been an OC for 1 year. Now you're taking the jump. Now you're like the CEO of a football team. That's a ton of pressure.
Within a year and a half.
That's a lot.
Think about that. You were the tight ends coach. Then all of a sudden you interim offensive coordinator, then offensive coordinator for a year, then head coach. Like, in a year and a half, you became a head coach. And sometimes people aren't ready for that. And I don't know Ben Johnson. I don't know how self-aware Ben Johnson is, but maybe he understands that he needs to put more tools in his tool belt before he goes out there and runs the whole show.
Yeah, and very well. And also you look at it like, hey, I want a promotion, but at the same time, you don't want to leave a good situation. Yeah. Like, he has a great situation with Detroit, with obviously Dan Campbell, the relationship they have, the organization from top to bottom, but also the players he has to work with. He's established a relationship with all these players, and you can win with these guys. So for Ben's sake, it's really not to me, it's a win-win in a way, because you return back to an offense, you know that you can be one of the best offenses in the league, and you know him being a head coaching candidate, that ain't going nowhere. Unless they completely crap the bed, which I don't see happening. And so you get another year as an OC, you get another year to kind of get more comfortable, kind of be groomed under Dan, and then you're still probably going to be a head coaching candidate next year. So it's a win-win for me, for Ben Johnson. I think it was a good decision. I wouldn't fault him to go get his bag, but hey, I'm selfish. I'm very selfish. Well, and we don't know that he's back. I'm happy.
We don't know what his contract is going to look like here, and like,
could be a bag too.
I was going to say, like, we don't know what the upper management for the Detroit Lions is thinking as far as paying offensive coordinators now. And like I said, if they consider making him assistant head coach, that would come with a hefty pay raise too. So if this is a bag situation, Lions got enough money. I mean, they got enough money to pay anybody, and fortunately, head coaching salaries don't count toward the salary cap. So pay the best coaches the best money.
Yeah, and I think Sheila will cut that check. She seems like that type. If you got a good offensive coordinator like Ben, I was looking at some of the highest paid OCs, and I'm looking at some of these salaries. I'm like, well, Ben's better than him. Ben's better than him. Ben's better than him. It's like he deserves one of the best highest paid salaries in the NFL. It's just a reality. Now, need more of a sample size, but nobody. I think Ben Johnson's kind of been the love child all year. Everybody's loved Ben. I mean, besides 2 games, New England and maybe Dallas, where they turned the ball over way too much. But for the most part, the offense was the strong suit of the team the entire year, and next year it'll be as well. So, man, future's bright in Detroit, especially offensively. And Ben Johnson, to me, good decision for him. He's still going to have an opportunity to be a head coach. But I can't say it enough, man. Like, as someone who his job is to talk about the Lions, the fact that Ben's back and we could watch this offense for another year and all the creativity it provides, I'm ecstatic. I'm excited.